On the 29th of May, 2024, South Africa will have its 7th national and provincial elections. This is 30 years since the first ballot was cast, marking the democratic era of our country. During elections, we usually focus on the parties, the politicians, the rallies, the speeches. But ultimately, it is the 27.7 million registered voters who on the day of the election will decide the next government. And so instead of waiting for the politicians or listening to the slogans, maybe it's time we listen to the voter. Behind every vote, there is a voice of a young woman who after 30 years hasn't had her first job. The voice of a grandmother looking after children who don't know where their next meal will come from. The voice of a young man living in a violent society, thinking that that might be his only way out of poverty. The voice of a young person who is saying, where is our freedom?
Young people are not interested in these elections because they don't know what they are about.
I don't really have a view. I mean, I don't have that much education on it, because the friend group I'm in, we think it's just there's no point in voting anymore, you know.
They don't even know the purpose of even doing these elections. And if we could take it back to our history, for them, I think, is a generation that believes, yes, apartheid is there, it happened, we are no longer there, we need to be moving forward. But if they are not connecting the impact of apartheid to where we are now, that's where we are going to be losing more people, young people. I think even as stats say, young people who are within voting age are the ones that are not coming into the polls to even register.
Looking at the percentage of young people that should be on the voters' roll, we have a gap of about 40% of people that are eligible to vote.
I don't think it is important to vote anymore because politicians make empty promises while campaigning. But once elected, they do not deliver on their promises. I do not see the need to vote anymore. There are a lot of unemployed graduates. I am speaking about people who were promised job creation if they vote.
The ANC lokenzana falsehood.
Okay.
So lokuthembele kubona sibangani nathi. Akunalutho ezwenzeka. Now sekuyila unyaka wokuvota, so voters voting ANC phinde wine.
I would say our 2000s and up have a problem with relating to why we are where we are at, you know, as a country. What happened, and they have the tendency of saying, can we just drop and stop blaming apartheid and move on? But then the consequences of apartheid is long not over. You know, there's a lot that people are still experiencing, the country is still experiencing. There's a lot of correction that still needs to be done, etc. But I just think along the way, I think we've lost it a bit.
Nelson Mandela's words, the dawn of our freedom, snaking queues from cities and sprawling townships to far-flung villages, an air of excitement and expectancy.
1994 is something I only read about in history and in other areas. I've never actually lived the experience of that first democratic election and what it meant for the country.
In 1994, I was 9 years old, and I experienced the first inauguration of our first black president. I was in Pretoria for that inauguration. It feels as if it happened yesterday.
Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression, of one by another and suffer the indignity.
I'm in 1994, Lena, like child. So I was not yet born. Like I was born in the middle of 1994.
In 1994, I was not here. I wasn't born yet.
I was not born yet in 1994. I was born in 2003.
Ke hopola hore batho bana ba thabile, ba thabetse change, ba thabetse president o montjha. O leng hore o tlo tlisa change mo South Africa.
First also. So I voted. I think things will come my way.
I was in grade 4, so I was 9 years old. Yeah, I was 9 turning 10.
I wasn't born. I was born in 2004.
People were happy. There was just this electrifying energy around the space. I don't know how to say it, but it was magical.
Quite an exciting time. It was a time of transition.
1994 was the beginning of the new South Africa, as Nelson Mandela put it, a fresh start for our country. 2024 very much gives us that opportunity. I mean, post-COVID, post 30 years of rule by one party in particular, the South African landscape has changed. The world is changing. The next 5 years will determine the next 15 to 20 years of South Africa's future.
Going forward, we need to see much movement from state institutions. For example, in terms of ability and capacity to spend capital budgets. Because in South Africa, we don't have a problem of resources. The issue is around ability to spend these funds, but also improving capacity of project management.
What I'm seeing now is that for us as Black people participating in this process, it seems as if it no longer holds that weight it had then. Because post 1994, there's been a lot of struggles, especially a struggle against Black people, where opportunities have gotten limited. The state of our education, chances are it has deteriorated from where it was up until now. Our communities seem to be stagnant. There isn't much of growth that's happening. What you are seeing, only people who succeed are people who are well connected, and people who are not connected, they're the ones that are suffering the most. So I think the idea of freedom and democracy and the jubilation that I saw then seems to not match up to what is happening now and where we are now as a country.
I think the last time that we looked, we had an 80% youth unemployment rate. I can't remember the demographic that was for, but I fall into there.
South Africa's unemployment rate rose to 32.9% in the first quarter of 2023 from 32.7% in the final quarter of last year.
You know, a lot of us, we stuck home. We struggling to get into school or college. We can't find work. And a lot of my friends refuse to register.
Thetha nawe nje manje uncedisa umalume wakhe ethaveni uqedile ukufunda uzothi uthi mawuthi uyavota uvote la akasebenzi umntwana.
We would hear helicopters and we would know that it's dangerous to be outside. There's police outside. Police are putting people under pressure, you know, those type of things. Hearing those same sounds in a different time zone. In this time, it's about gangsterism, and you know that insecurity still tends to kick in from time to time. I wonder what happened.
So in my capacity at So We Vote, because we register young people, we go out, we try and meet young people. We started this when we were in high school, so I was talking to a lot of my peers in high school because I was in matric last year. Voting is not particularly appealing at this moment, simply because the feedback I get is that the parties that are contesting don't give young people any type of enthusiasm or excitement to vote, or that they prove inadequate to the task of being trusted to govern. We came to understand politics during the Fees Must Fall movement. We came to understand politics during the Zuma Must Fall era. For us, we've never known a functional South Africa, and the political players have contributed to that. And so it's because of that that there is an enormous amount of trepidation about voting, that many would feel that voting is just not worth it because the people we're voting for, we've seen them since we were in primary school causing chaos, if they weren't causing chaos, doing nothing.
Everywhere you go is corruption. I mean, yeah, I'd say corruption. Like, I mean, I can't even get my license now because it's like built in the system that we have to bribe them to get our license, and now that's like another 3,000 extra on top of just learning.
I think we lost focus. We lost focus into everything that has been fought for over the years. The focus has moved from for the people to be for myself and whatever I can gain as much as I can for however long I can.
Service delivery in South Africa makes me sad. Like, okay, let me talk about load shedding, right? We have people who live with like, but again, the oxygen, which is their daily life thing. So just imagine you are in your home, then electricity goes off, you have to breathe with oxygen. That's when we end up losing people. So that's why, like, load shedding.
Sifuna Ndoni, out of these elections, what do you want to see the most come out of these elections as abantu abazoya uyovota? And what is important, as Utesa said, is that you don't vote for umuntu, you vote for izinto that you care about. So the first part of the exercise is, what are the issues that you care about? So maybe bethethe housing up. So when as umuntu individually, what is it that you want from this election? And part of this, that we do at the Rivonia Circle is to emphasize the fact that politics are personal. So what is a personal issue to you that you would like to see out of the elections? So if Uhleli and you're unemployed and you think that out of these elections you want employment, that can be an issue that you care about. The importance of this exercise is to get people to vote based on issues rather than who is on the ballot. So part of the 2024 elections is getting people to understand that it's about what they care for and what they want out of the elections. So it gets people thinking, who are the options and who are the political parties that care about what I care for and who are the ones that don't. So it gets people to understand and get interested to learn about what other parties and what they are offering as well.
Reason ya rona kore ha re bone reason ya vote because of batho bana ba re tshepisa ntho tse lo reng ha di.
There are 400 people in parliament. There are 40 million of us. We matter more in the election than they do.
I don't think that our democratic process is fair. To have the same party for so many years in a row, even after stuff like the state capture with Zuma and everything, to still have the same party being elected, something is not right. I believe that our democratic process is corrupt and it does not function. We live in a flawed democracy.
Okay, youth, we're not gonna vote. Now, consider myself as a youth because I'm still capable. Like you youth. I, for one, I'm not gonna vote because of I'm not working. I want to vote because of I'm not gonna vote for the winning party.
I think it's just there's no point in voting anymore, you know, because like nothing's changing. It's always the same party, same president. Corruption happens with that president. It's a cycle.
The ANC now with 230 seats in the National Assembly. It has, of course, lost close to 20 seats compared to 2014.
Given the last 30 years, having one party that you are following can lead a country to its own demise. I'm saying this because we looked into just one party governing and bringing people, some who don't have the expertise to do what needs to build South Africa, to be taking and sitting in influential roles that needs to make differences. But I think for us to govern, for us, for the country to stand strong, it means we need multiple thinking, multiple people who are going to look into one vision, and collectively we all work towards that particular vision.
Back the party that gets things done. Do your bit to get your vote done.
When you vote EFF, you vote for yourself, your land, your jobs.
Education means I can change my life and my family's life for the better. And that is why I'm voting for the ANC.
I think supporting one political party is inherently flawed. I think, in some ways, the multiple parties in our country's political system is both our greatest advantage and our greatest disadvantage. It's a great disadvantage because how do you pay attention to all of these faces? But it's a great advantage in that you get an immense diversity of opinions, of thoughts, of ideas. You can get leaders who are incredibly principled.
So, do you know how many parties there are in South Africa? Does anyone know how many parties we have in South Africa? Do you want to guess? Can we guess? Give me a number, somebody. Anybody? 20 something? More than 30?
Everyone has their own opinion, their own view politically. So if you were to maybe force them to follow one party, it would not serve their opinions or their beliefs into how that particular political party will change the country.
It's important to have multiple parties running for government. Definitely 100%. I don't like the number of coalitions that we find in our government. I think that then there's too many competing agendas.
I feel it's important for young people to understand different parties' manifestos and to see which one agrees with you the best. So if you feel in your ward, you feel that one party is better, but on a national level, another party is better, I feel like you need to not just be pig-headed or hard-headed in one party, that's one party. And there's also generational parties, like your granny and your mother and your father have always voted for this party, but I feel like it's important to have your own voice around that. So to go, I'm not going to vote, or I don't feel that this party serves South Africa anymore in the way it should, and to break away from that and make your own decision as to what that is and what's right for you.
We have one, I don't want to call it a problem, but I would call it's part of South Africa's socio-political idiosyncrasies, where you find that historical identity loyalties refuse to go away.
I don't think we should have one political party to support. You know why? Because I'll say I'll have one political party to support, but then you find that very same political party is failing us. It means I need to change to another one to taste that another one. Yeah.
There are many political parties. I think we should vote for a change or give another political party chance so that re tlo bona hore e tlo re etsetsa eng. Because if ever political party e tlo go fa rona batho ba 86 upwards chance ya gore re sebetse go tlo ba better because of re na le bana re na le responsibilities. If ever batho ba re tshwereng ba le ko parliamenting ba le more than 60 years old ba gona go sebetsa. So now at 38 why ke sa gona go sebetsa, what 37 why ke sa gona go sebetsa.
When you're voting, you're picking someone who you feel can turn the country, can turn the state into something that isn't an impediment in your life, but into something that can be an advantage, something that can add on to you building a life. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Not enough people are voting, and I want to see changes in this country. And that's really the only real way I can see it without going into the roads and burning tires. And even then, that doesn't always work. I want to see changes in this country. I'm tired.
There's a concept that I learned about that speaks of deep democracy. And deep democracy says everyone needs to be involved, whether you are for that party or not. But deep democracy requires everyone to participate. But this type of democracy that we are having, only it's a democracy for a chosen few. And that's why you'd find that people are laying back, thinking that politicians are the solutions to everything, whereas politicians actually are placed as a mouthpiece for the people on the ground.
So I want us just to talk about 4 things that we can do.
make our votes more powerful.
Community hall or community center or the shopping center around Dailo or Rivonia again. Kube na something ukuthi ama-ATM ogogo bayilanda imali bangabanjwa.
I never how we school lo yuban litumela di containers. How ka how we school se serious ga lwana sama. Sathi asifuni umntwana uzoyakhula container. Awuna ngana kwa mo government uton high school. Kufuneka abantu emsebenzini yazi. Bese kuthiwa 18 to 35. Thina over 35. Yes. Now I vote ayisho ukuthi 18 to 35.
I'm worried that the ANC is going to get elected again. They are comfy. They're so comfy in that position. I'm worried that they're going to get elected again. That's what scares me.
My worry around young people coming into this election is that our young people are not informed. There's a big role or a big gap when it comes to civic education that I think we have neglected because it takes a lot of education for one to be able to say, now I think I can make an informed decision so that I know who I even want to vote for.
So I think my biggest fear is that it stays the same and that nothing changes. I think my biggest hope is that something becomes, that there's a change, that something's different.
The ANC remains the majority party with 230 out of the 400 available seats, with the DA occupying 84 seats, while the EFF is sitting at 44, with 11 other political parties sharing the rest. It remains to be seen how much of this will change.
So that's why I'm saying, we as young people, our lives are at danger in South Africa.
I'm just worried something like a coup is gonna happen and then this country just goes into shit, you know. Like, I mean, for instance, those raids, those were hectic. Most people couldn't go out and stuff like that. I don't want no like civil war or some shit like that, you know.
So the trepidation to vote comes in that, okay, I registered to vote, who will I vote for? I make the argument, however, that register to vote anyway, because it's not all made up of bad people. South Africa is a country that has pockets of excellence and pockets of mediocrity. It's unfortunate that the mediocrity has come to dominate discourse in politics in our country. But we're seeing a very weird shift in 2024 in that the pockets of excellence are leaving their usual areas in academia, in business, in many different spaces of our society, activism. And they're going into politics to say, let's bring excellence back there again. The first 15 years we had excellence in our leadership. Let's bring that back so that South Africa has a brighter future.
As an individual, I can say to them, guys, go out and vote, because voting might change your life one day. Because if you don't vote, remember, your vote might go to the ruling part, which you might not need that vote to go there or what. So make your own choice.
Potential youth voters expressed mixed feelings about their participation in next year's elections.
In terms of voting, we are really interested, because at the end of the day, we are not only students, but we are the youth of South Africa. So that is why we need to go and register to vote so that we can raise our voices.
Voting is very much important to us as young people. It will help us to change the economic system so that it will be able to offer us with more job opportunities.
As young people, not only voting, but the biggest responsibility is how are we accounting or keeping our leaders accountable post-elections? How are we participating in processes within our communities? Because after national elections, there are local elections, there are ward councillors, there are ward committees. How do young people find a place where they can contribute to the democracy that we are living in if they are not participating in simple things like the IDP, where government comes into a space and say, decide what you want to see happening in your community. But if young people are not there to envision what they want to see in their community, chances are we would be stuck in a space where young people feel as if they are not contributing enough to the development of our country or their community.
I'm not optimistic at all. I can't. I want to go and start a life in Australia, and I do want to have a house here, but I do not trust this country enough to put all my eggs here in one basket.
I need to have a say,
Yeah, because I want a better future for myself and the youth.
My message to the youth is for them to come in numbers to vote so that they don't say, I wish I could have registered.
I think it's important because the youth has a say in everything that's going on in this world, in the economy and so on.
I want a responsible leader. Issues, parties can speak to them. But it'll be the quality of the individual I select that will determine how I vote. We need, as South Africans, I say this as a voter, I want to feel the soul of the leader I'm electing. I want to be able, as I'm checking the name on that ballot box, or the party, or the face, if it's an individual or a political organization, I want to be able to say the person I'm voting for gives me an enormous sense of integrity and of ethical and moral leadership.
I'm expecting the young people to come from their comfort zones, to stand up and say, you know what, I want to be counted. I think when I was 25, I was still young. So I was looking forward to, with my parents and my grandparents, to stand in a queue and make my voice and my vote count. You know, so and we don't really see that, and I'm worried.
The greatest success of South Africa has been probably the cohesion we've managed to sustain in this country. I was talking with a friend of mine a few days ago about this. We're a country made up of multiple tribal groups, multiple ethnicities, people who speak multiple languages. In any other country, that would be the basis on which civil wars are fought, the basis on which immense divisions tear the nation apart. We're still a country that's operational with all of these different groups, and we embrace each other. So I count that as one of our nation's greatest successes, because that could have torn us apart.
What we've gotten right is the education. The educational system, I believe it's at its best. The health services, I believe it is at its best, because educationally, we don't pay for school fees. So that's one thing I believe South Africa has done right.
Nna ke bona o na le biggest success mo South Africa, as long as ke ntse ke le mo blocking e one, ke ntse ke le mo, ke dula le kae, ke dula ko heso, it's not my house, ke ko heso. So ke tlo re success e ka mo, because ho tlo succeed bao ba ko ding, wena o ntse le ko RDP, o ko ntse le ko lole, I never succeed. You want?
The one thing we got right is to really get rid of the apartheid system. I think to move out of the shambles into opening the eyes of people to say there's a bigger world than the blinkers that we've been wearing over the years, blinkers that we've been forced to wear. So the fact that we can now, go anywhere in the world, do anything without looking over your shoulder, thinking that somebody somewhere is going to hold me accountable for something that I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to be accountable for, or somebody's going to punish me for doing the right thing, type of thing. So that's the advantage of, the one thing that I say, the freedom, the coming out of Egypt, that type of thing.
Politics are personal. So what is a personal issue to you that you would like to see out of the elections? So if Uhleli and you're unemployed and you think that out of these elections you want employment, that can be an issue that you care about. Does that make sense?
If John Steenhuisen walks in here, he's a member of parliament, he works for us. We don't work for him. If Julius walks in, he works for us. We don't work for him. Any politician, you must tell them you work for me.
This is our country. This will always be my home country, and for you to not want to be invested in the future of your country doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know what to say to somebody who doesn't see that.
Hey, one thing I'm hoping for is to see people wake up. I think especially the young people, the youth needs to wake up. People are sitting in parliament, falling asleep. I think those guys need to step back a bit. Some of them, because of the wealth of knowledge, they can step into mentorship roles. But I think it's about time to hand over the baton. And, you know, because they have run the race, I think there's a lot of focus that's been lost. I think our country is in shambles, eh?
I think the one thing that as a South African you can do for our country is just being patriotic. I mean, we have no other country except this country. And if we are not patriotic about South Africa and all that comes with it, we are not able to also contribute to where we want to see South Africa going. So I think my passions are driven around how do we make sure that young people are aware of our current state and they see themselves as contributors in making sure that things get better instead of just continuing with whatever that's happening.
I think it's a better choice for my country, I guess, because the time we live in now, we live in a poverty state, especially in townships. Like, we're not satisfied about what the government is doing for us, but I think we gotta appreciate what they give us. Yeah. But for this, I'm excited because it's my first time.
We have no other choice but to vote, given the situation that South Africa is in. That the crisis that our nation faces right now is fundamentally a leadership crisis. And elections give us a chance every 5 years, if you're talking national, again 5 years if you're talking local, to press the refresh button, start afresh, pick new leadership. So the emphasis I get from them is that we must all vote. But unfortunately, the ones who are saying we must all vote are in the minority. The majority feel completely disconnected from the situation, resigned from politics in general. I personally think we should vote. It is the last weapon we have right now to try put together any type of South Africa that is livable and exciting.
Pull up their sleeves, or shall I say our sleeves, because I'm definitely not old, to pull up our sleeves and then start to work and turn this country into the country that we want to see, because it's our country.
I would encourage them to vote, ne, because I believe that their vote matters and it will somehow count in them and in helping them to maybe politically change their lives.
Change is good. Change is good for a party to hold the same position. Corruption can fester.
The nation is ripe for an explosion, and the type of explosion that destroys most countries. But we have a moment coming in this election that will determine the future. And if we choose right with the correct type of leadership, we'll have a future to look forward to and a future to be proud of. But should things go awry and people not turn out, should democracy falter and the results are called into question or whatever, my fear is that South Africa won't be able to recover from that and that we'll finally cross that threshold of no return.
I mean, I think if you don't want a certain party to be in power, go vote. Whether it's a party you don't know about, like even if you don't educate yourself on this, I mean, you must educate yourself to an extent so you're not voting for the right party. But I'm wrong party, but just try and vote honestly, because voting doesn't gives a big difference.
My hope for these elections go re ke tsamaye ke lo vote ne. Let's say ke ya ke lo vote, then hope ya rona gore we must change the leaders and give others a chance. Re ba fe chance, re bone hore in the 5 years ba tlo etsa eng, ba tlo re etsetsang, re tlo thola eng ko 5 years eng. Because now for the years tse leng hore ANC ntse leader a ke na next, a ka thola next.
I don't know what the future holds, yet it would be a disadvantage if the right to vote it's no longer provided to everyone, because then we would have lost our speech, we would have lost our right to even say anything. We've lost our opinion, because I feel a vote is like an opinion. You decide where you want to put it and put your trust to that person that you've selected. Yet the biggest part is, after doing that, how do we make sure that we put South Africa first? There's a lot of things that are going wrong, and it requires young people, South Africans, people of all ages and all races to come together so that we can co-create a South Africa that we want to live in, because obviously this one is not the one.
We love this country so much. So I think we often have avid debates in our family, like, you know, what's happening, what's going on, where, you know, what are these new manifestos that are coming in, and what's the political climate like? And, you know, of course, every South African's like thing is, do we stay, do we go? But we can't seem to go because we just have so much hope that something good's coming, you know? You know, when you feel it in your waters, I feel it in my waters, something different needs to happen, and it's gonna.
We get the chance to reshape this country, to create a new vision for South Africa. What we failed to do in the first 30 years, we can prioritize as our agenda. Young people of each generation have an agenda that they want to achieve for the country, for their lifetime. If we want to have a country where people can value democracy, we should say to ourselves, rather than concede and resign ourselves from the process altogether, we should say, how did we go wrong? How can we be better? And if we're going to be better, where do we start?
What we need to do in this election is focus on the voter. What does the voter want? What does the voter need? And what is the power of the voter in this election? Because ultimately, it is the voter that will decide. We are the voters.